you need to also look after yourself. I also take major issue when doctors are overweight. I also take major issues when a 300-pound doctor walks in the room and has the nerve to tell me what to do with my health. No chance, man. I'm not listening to a word that comes out of your mouth.
What about those changes that you saw made you feel like it was getting softer?
Oh, they took I think they took one of the weeks out of basic training, one of the field weeks. You no longer have to do a fireman carry. You no longer have to do a trench dig. You don't have to do push-ups anymore. It's gotten softer. In the Canadian Army now, you're allowed to have your hair any color way you want. You can have nail polish. You can have piercings. You can wear your hair down. You don't have to blouse your boots. Things are different. Things are very different than when I was in.
So how did they, if they took those physical requirements away, how do they properly vet people to be able to tell if they're going to hold it?
The Canadian military states they're no longer a fighting force, right? So Afghanistan ended. Canada was out of that a lot earlier than America. And so we're no longer a fighting force. You don't need to train people the same way, which in my opinion is wrong. And I said that to a bunch of the colonels. I said, I think it's wrong. I think that we should be training hard all the time. And they said they're training hard, but they're not training the same. They're not fighting in an active war. I said, not yet. The reality is if you stay ready, you don't have to get ready. And that's not a cliche term. That's a reality. If you let people slack off and then all of a sudden you need all of them to be strong fighters, well, how do you expect that to happen if for the past 5-10 years, you've told them they don't have to be? It's no different than police force when they gain weight and then you show up in the cops 200 pounds. You go, Who are you chasing?
Yeah, no, it seems like it would be best to be in fighting shape even in the dormant times of the military. I mean, you see this with UFC fighters a lot. Like the guys who tend to excel and can take a fight at any time are the guys that stay within striking distance of their weight / fighting shape. Like they're not in a camp all year round, but they could be there really soon, and Dana White can call them, and 3 weeks later they'll be in the ring. And those guys do really fucking well.
And I think it's really important too, if you're an athlete or you whatever it is, if you're a cop, you're a firefighter, you're a paramedic, you're a military member, you're border security, I believe, and people can say whatever they want to this, I believe if you're the front line of defense for whatever position and job that you choose to do, you need to also look after yourself. I also take major issue when doctors are overweight. I also take major issues when a 300-pound doctor walks in the room and has the nerve to tell me what to do with my health. No chance, man. I'm not listening to a word that comes out of your mouth. I'm not. And that may be me being harsh on individuals and from a judgment standpoint, but I'm not judging them because they are that. I'm just saying I'm not going to take advice and take you seriously if you're talking about my health when you look like that. Because it's clear you don't care enough to look after yourself. So why do you care enough to tell me how to look after myself?
Yeah, I had an incident, or not me, but there was an incident when I was on the subway yesterday coming back from the gym, and this guy who was clearly something wrong with him mentally ill, was just yelling in people's faces, like going down the subway, which happens. But
I don't tolerate that well.
Yeah. you learn very quickly to put headphones in even when you're not listening to anything and just ignore the shit out of people, which is probably not good for
Isn't that sad?
Human nature. It is. And it's a sad reality of part of the person I've become living in New York is that I've gotten really good at ignoring people to
It's time for you to move away from New York.
I have had those thoughts a lot. And I am getting closer to that. I've lived around New York my whole life. My family is in Long Island, which is about 45 minutes away from me. So there are benefits to being able to, go out of the city or go up to snowboard in Vermont, things like that. But there are other places that also have those benefits. And I can convince, my parents are pretty close to retiring, get out of Long Island and come somewhere else, go across the country or whatever. But yeah, I was on the subway yesterday. This dude's just going up and down in a circle, just yelling in people's faces. And he went past me. I'm just like, whatever, fucking, he's just walking. I made sure there's a good amount of space between me and him. And then he continued, and then he went to the middle of the car. And then this guy told him to stop. And then he pushed the mentally ill guy, pushed this guy in a suit. The guy in the suit pushed him back. The mentally ill guy tripped, fell, and then got back up looking like he was gonna, cause a problem. At that point, the train happened to be pulling into a station. It stopped there for 5-7 minutes, and the cops were called. I was a half a mile away from my apartment, so my plan was to just walk out anyway. But as I was walking out, this really fat cop walked in to go handle the subway car. And in my mind, I was
handling anybody.
And in my mind, I was like, listen, I've done martial arts for a few years now. Like, I've had my ass kicked by overweight people. Like, I know that is a possibility, that someone could be very technically good and also have a few extra pounds on them. But this guy was like offensively fat for a cop, like to the point where I couldn't imagine him being able to do his job if he had to run someone down, be able to subdue someone.
Own safety.
Yeah, for his own safety.
For his own safety.
Yeah, exactly. So in my mind, I was thinking, if this altercation was worse, if someone had a weapon, someone had a knife or a gun, or someone was continuing to try to beat the shit out of someone, this guy's not going to do shit. Like, he has a gun, but it would help you enormously to also be in shape and be able to protect yourself. And I just, like, I know I can't get a full grasp of someone's physical capabilities just by looking at them. There's more to the story, but I just can't, like, in my mind, I walked past him and I was like, what the fuck? Like, how is this guy going to do shit?
It's only frustrating. Like, look, I just think our society and culture has... because of people like Lizzo who act like they're healthy and say that they're healthy. Well, you can be fat and healthy. You can't. That's not, I'm sorry. This isn't to bash overweight people. This is a care more about yourself. Here's the thing. People don't get like that for no reason. Very often there's a trauma involved there, and I'm empathetic towards that. But here's where I get upset, is when you have these actors and actresses who are morbidly obese on the cover of things like Cosmo and Fitness World saying overweight and healthy. That's not, like, that's an oxymoron. It's unacceptable to say that, because then you're telling the next generation, the very young, impressionable generation, that it's okay to be like that and that it's healthy, when it's not. It causes massive issues, including, and not limited to, look at the way COVID went for people with comorbidities of overweight. If you're a cop, you owe it to yourself for your safety. Not forget anybody else. Forget what anyone else thinks or cares. For yourself, if somebody grabbed a hold of you or you're chasing down a suspect, it's not going to happen. You're right. There might be people who are very, very, very proficient in grappling and jiu-jitsu and things like that. But tell me how many of those, few and far between. I just think you owe it to yourself and the service and those that you're serving alongside to do your best in all things that you can. That could potentially be the reason you're alive or dead at the end of a shift.
Yeah, I always think when I hear people saying, like, obese can be healthy, you don't see a lot of obese influencers in their 50s and 60s. There are a ton of fit men and women that you see on magazine covers that have gray hair, like the silver foxes, they're fit. The women that are fit at that age, the options really drop off after the 20s and 30s for the people who are obese and on magazine covers. Like, it's not a sustainable thing to. Well,
think about what you're doing to your inside. No, think about what you're doing to your inside. Think about what you're doing to your joints. Think about what you're doing to your spine. I mean, there's no issue with. Listen, a lot of us gain weight, we fluctuate, we do whatever. Life happens, trauma happens. Food is America, and half the time I don't blame the people for being overweight either. I blame these conglomerates and organizations who were paid off to say that sugar was okay and that fats were bad and that we should be looking at food differently in our food pyramid. So I don't blame these people. It sucks because a lot of these generations before us were set up to fail because of diet and because of health and because of trauma. They were never taught it's okay to talk about things. So they ate themselves into these issues. And then you develop diabetes and so on and so forth. And it's not healthy. And I'm really, quite frankly, tired of individuals telling me that, for their body size, they should be, maybe 135. And you know what? Maybe they're sitting at 235 or 250. It's like, I'm sorry, no. You have to have some self-accountability. And like I said, if it's trauma related, like, give us a call. We'll get you some trauma support. We'll get you some help. But you should want for yourself and for those around you, especially if you have children, you should want to care. You should want to stick around. But the chances of you sticking around as long as somebody who's the same person, but 100 pounds less, like my buddy, Ryan Culberson, he's a Marine, really awesome guy. He gained a bunch of weight. Like after a bunch of stuff happened to him, he walked off 100 pounds in 1 year just by walking. That's
really?
it. Changed his diet and walking.
Do you know how much he was walking per day?
Yeah, he was roughly, I think he was between like up to 12 miles a day, 12 or plus. But that's all he did. He didn't do weights. He cut out bullshit. He started eating predominantly. Well, now he thinks that vegetables are the devil. So sorry, Ryan. But he thinks, he's a carnivore guy, right? So, he eats the cleanest I've ever seen for most people. He's got the most energy and he walked it off. And what he would do is he would literally put his son on his back and walk. And that's it. It doesn't like people think that to be well and to be healthy, you have to be these huge CrossFit athletes or these runners or these whatever. You don't, man. You just got to move your body. But most people think moving the body is if I'm not running or I'm not doing this, I'm not going to lose weight. It's like, well, over half of it, majority of it is what you put in your mouth.
Yeah. This guy would like half of my freezer because it's full of meat and cream spinach. So he'd be like,
he hates spinach.
Be like,
hates it.
Yeah, it's I mean, even just walking is better than nothing. And I mean, walking 12 miles a day is nowhere close to nothing. Like that's that's a shit ton of walking. But
if you just walk, like for people who are completely like sanitary, if you're just sitting and you don't walk at all, so do yourself a favor. Instead of walking to the bathroom once a day, walk to the bathroom 3 times a day. If it's, I don't like to walk down the street to the stop sign. Okay, walk down to the street to the stop sign once a day. And then the next week, do 2 times a day. And then the next week, do 3 times a day. You just got to start. And that's the biggest thing, is just starting. And that's what we preach in our Mental Health Monday. That's what we talk about in our Signal group with our BNU Army. It's walk. Just start. Do anything. I don't even give a shit. I don't care. Take a can of something and just do bicep curls with it. You're doing more than you were doing sitting still. It doesn't have to be these huge workouts where you're beasting yourself, but any effort is better than no effort.
Oh yeah, I've done 1,000 calf raises on this seat since we started recording this podcast.
Exactly. Perfect.
You can do it from wherever.
Exactly.
So are you ready for the smoothest transition of all time?
Kind of now.
So you probably did a lot of walking when you first arrived in Afghanistan.
That was good, man.
Does that make it smoother to point out that I'm going to do it? It's like trying to pick up a girl at a bar and be like, okay,
I do it all the time.
I'm going to give you my pickup line in about 30 seconds. Mentally prepare yourself. I'm going to come back in 30 seconds and then we're going to go from there. All right. Break.
I do it all the time. You're good. You're solid. I liked it.
Yeah. So what year did you arrive in Afghanistan, and after how much training was it? I think you said September to April was the training. 8
so
months?
I did January to April of training. So basic training, SQ, DP1. Then I was posted to regiment, and we did workup training, meaning we went somewhere else and played war games to get ready. And then I deployed in April of 2009.